I think it's important to realize why this happened. The manner in which Joe Biden withdrew from Afghanistan signaled weakness, and Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine because of it. And we have done our part to help, but we haven't shown the strength necessary to deter it. So what's going to happen in November, hopefully, is that Trump will win, and he will signal to Russia that Russia has to go back to the lines before they invaded 2 years ago. So I think that the only thing that's going to solve this, it's not missiles, it's not money, it is strength. And the only person that is running for president in the United States right now that is strong is Donald Trump.
So, but Donald Trump has said he can finish this war within a very short period of him becoming president.
One phone call.
Is that feasible, given the fact that, and I take on board what you're saying about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, but the truth of the matter is, Congressman, you know as well as I do, this war's been going on for 10 years. It's been going on since the invasion of Crimea and the Donbass region in 2014. I was actually in Kyiv the moment the Russians rolled into Crimea as well. This precedes President Biden by a long way.
It goes back to his predecessor, Obama, who's arguably still running the country. So Obama allowed them to take Crimea, and under President Trump, nothing happened. And I can promise you that when he comes back, the first thing he's going to do is he's going to say, you have to go back to the lines that existed before he left office. And that's going to happen. Not only that, but the hostages will be released from Gaza. I can promise you that President Trump is not going to tolerate the nonsense that has been tolerated by Biden. And he doesn't have to do anything. He just has to threaten. And those threats are hollow under Joe Biden, who's clearly not fully 100%. And they sing true under President Trump.
But those pre-invasion lines of the rest of Ukraine involve actually Ukraine giving up sovereign territory. I presume we're talking about lines that include regions, Kharkiv, Donbass, and Crimea, that are sovereign Ukrainian territory, Congressman.
I would assume that President Trump is going to say, the day I left office are the new lines. And they can then have a conversation about the land that was ceded under Obama.
But again, this is one conversation. I want to talk to you about the election as well. But that involves a sovereign nation giving up territory to an aggressor. That's quite a message, isn't it? It's saying the lines before I got there, OK, they're not great, but they're the best we're going to give to the nation that's been invaded.
I think the more important thing is the end of hostilities, the end of conflict, the end of war. So they can go back to the status quo that existed when Trump left office. And I think that's the conversation they're going to have first.
But no nation on the planet should accept that an aggressor takes a piece of their land, fortifies a piece of their land, and has to accept that because allies feel that actually they just want the end to a frozen conflict.
The conversation surrounding Crimea is something that can occur after that. I think it is reasonable for President Trump to say, the day that I left office is the new status quo, and if you don't like it, you're going to have a very difficult time ahead of you.
Congressman, I'll just follow up on what you said about Gaza as well and the conflict in the Middle East. The Trump administration did make huge efforts to try and broker some form of peace deal with other partners in the region as well, and to be honest, failed as well to find a peace solution as well. What gives you hope that actually conflict in the Middle East can actually be ended this time round, if indeed there is a Trump presidency?
You just need to appreciate that at the Democrat National Convention 2 weeks ago, the parents of a hostage, an American hostage in Gaza, held by Hamas, pleaded for an end to hostilities, and that individual that was a hostage was murdered just last week. Americans being killed by terrorist groups is not something that President Trump will tolerate. Joe Biden has barely even said anything, no less done anything. And the criticisms from Vice President Harris of Netanyahu and of the Israeli position is not tenable. So again, I think this is going to be another issue on the ballot in November. U.S. weakness causes massive challenges for American citizens, but it actually causes huge problems for the world. And our weakness began when Joe Biden took office. It culminated when we left Afghanistan and 13 American service members died. And the world has suffered because of our weakness. And we need to have a president that is respected in the global community, and that is what we're going to get in November.
Do you believe that allies here in Italy and throughout the NATO organization and other allies globally will feel that actually a Trump administration, a new Trump administration, has got their back, believes in geopolitical alliances? Because a lot of people last time round felt very strongly that President Trump actually was trying to turn his back on NATO, wanted to turn his back on some of those traditional alliances.
I don't think that's accurate. People portrayed it as that, but it was not accurate. He said you have to pay your fair share.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to follow the agreement, why should we?
So and now most NATO nations are paying over 2%, and now he's changing the goalpost, making it 3%.
I think that he's the ever negotiator. That's what he does. But I think at the end of the day, our alliances with like-minded democracies in the world is critical, and he knows that. And he will always talk in a certain way to get a reaction. But Western democracies, Western values are aligned, and authoritarian dictatorships are joining forces. And there is indeed a clash, and we need to make sure that we work together to hold Russia and China and Iran and North Korea accountable because they're not playing by the same rules.
Congressman, I want to just to some of the economic issues. We've only got a very limited amount of time, and I appreciate your conversations about the geopolitics and those alliances as well. To 60% blanket tariffs on Chinese exports or imports into the US, does that make sense for an American consumer that relies in large part on a vast amount of import from China? That's going to make the cost of living crisis that much more untenable for many in America, isn't it?
It's either stand up to a trading partner that is not playing by the rules or suffer a slow death. So, yes, we need to hold China accountable. They are a huge portion of the global economy, but they can't cheat. They can't steal intellectual property. They can't subsidize their businesses to give their businesses a competitive advantage. That's a certain death. So we have to hold them accountable, and it's not something the United States can do. Europe needs to stand up as well and say, we appreciate your incredible wealth, your people, your geography, all of these benefits that you have, but you can't subsidize your businesses. And when a government subsidizes a business, the free market fails. Yeah. And that cannot be tolerated because they will continue to have an advantage, and it's a guaranteed loss. We will lose to them if we allow the Chinese government to subsidize their businesses in the global economy. And we have to stand up to them, and we have to be united in doing that. And that's one of the messages that we have here at the 50th anniversary at Ambrosetti.
Yeah, and look, you're a veteran of Ambrosetti as well, as is Senator Graham, who I believe is here as well. And look, there's a lot of Republican voices here. But are they aligned with what the president's saying about Europe as well? Because, look, we know Mr. Trump says a lot of things. A lot of politicians say a lot of things. But he also says Europe is a foe. And he says in many ways they're as bad as China as well here in the European Union. I don't believe you, well, necessarily that most of the Republicans I speak to believe that for one moment as well. But does that mean that Europe should fear a Trump presidency?
Absolutely not. The world should welcome a Trump presidency. And, again, the chaos that we see, whether it's in Ukraine, in Israel, or in the global economy. The policies coming out of the Biden administration have hurt billions of people in the world, whether it is inflation from spending $7 trillion we didn't have, whether it was instability because of our weakness. The world benefits when the United States is strong. And it's not because we're going to take advantage, it's because there's going to be peace, there's going to be economic stability. These are all the things that the world should welcome. And I think when President Trump speaks about Europe as a foe, he's probably more speaking about social values and progressive nature of many European governments and many European leaders. And again, these are the values that we see that are causing huge problems. The energy issues that we're facing in our country are because of the government, because of government regulations, whether it is...
I've got to come back at you, sir. The US produces more oil and gas today than it's ever done in history.
And yet we were a net exporter and we were energy independent under President Trump. President Biden came in. He ended multiple permits. He made it harder to drill. He ended fracking, all of these things.
They told me to wrap. I'm going to come back at you one more time. One of the most senior oil men in US oil, arguably the most senior, but turned around to me and said, we have a great relationship with the Biden administration. We've had clarity from them. To be honest, we had chaos from the previous administration.
The chaos was because of competition, because we were sprinting towards being energy exporters, and we were harnessing our natural resources. The Biden administration puts the environmental regulations ahead of energy independence and ahead of lowering prices for American citizens. And that's something that Trump has a better balance.
And he said he would halve the prices very soon in the speech yesterday.